Thank you everyone for coming here this morning on this historic day at the UN. We'll wrap up before the Pope arrives, so you can all be able to navigate. I think he's arriving around 2 or 3 o'clock. What an exciting day. I mean, we heard from the companies here in terms of, I think this is one of the new things we see at BCtA is the emergence of these domestic companies playing an incredible role at a country level in building their businesses. And one of the things that came out of the discussion, which we didn't have on stage, were the policy issues. And I was talking to Luis Ross of the Inter-American Development Bank that next year we definitely should have some government policymakers. We're working with the IFC World Bank Group on a G20 framework on inclusive business, and we'll specifically are interested in bringing policymakers to the table for this discussion. But the innovations and the scale and the sophistication of what these companies are doing is quite exciting and quite impressive. Next slide. So I'll speak just briefly in terms of what the business call to action is doing in its next phase for the next 3 years, and also what we do. Okay, great. The business call to action is a global advocacy platform that seeks commitment from companies around their inclusive business activities. We're interested in what is their business strategy in the coming years in terms of time-bound sort of targets and how they are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goal. We look at basically business models that look at the base of the pyramid on less than $8 a day. That is sort of the threshold. So it covers most of the poor, the near poor in most developing countries. Next slide. It is a unique multilateral alliance between key donor governments, including the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, the UK Department for International Development, the US Agency for International Development, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Government of Finland, the UNDP, which hosts the Secretariat. And currently in our second phase right now, we have the Inter-American Development Bank and the UN Global Compact as our partner. We'll be looking for more sort of foundational partner, but we're pleased to have that. Next slide. We have 4 key value proposition. I mean, number 1 is to drive these private commitments, private sector commitments around inclusive business. It is an opportunity for companies to showcase what they're doing, but also think about future business strategy. Given the fact that we ask for very specific key performance indicator, which are self-selected by the companies around their business and social sort of activities, we actually also offer impact measurement and knowledge capture and assistance for member companies. And I'll speak briefly about that. We just launched something called the Impact Measurement Service, the BCtA Impact Measurement Service, and that helps because this is one of the gaps we notice is companies, while they are able to think about their strategy, trying to have ongoing monitoring systems that collects and capture data around their social impact is quite difficult for them to do. And as you saw today, one of the key things it's not for us to speak, it's for actually the peer pioneer firms to exchange knowledge between each other across sectors. There are a lot of initiatives that are very much sector focused. We do see this value of a cross-sectoral sort of knowledge exchange because many of the challenges are similar when you're dealing with the base of the pyramid, and that there is opportunity for collaborative partnership across sectors. Next. So we have over 137 companies who have made commitment this year. This was a banner year we have had up to now, and the year has not ended. 33 new company commitments. And you can see the range. These are all the logos of their various companies. And we have a list of all of their commitments in the back. Next slide. So the trajectory, you can see we have doubled the number of commitments. And it's fascinating. When we started in 2008, the concept of inclusive business and base of the pyramid, I mean, Inter-American Development Bank had, very much pioneered, IFC had done the work around market sizing, but it was small. But now it is becoming a global movement, we must say, with a diversity of company types and geographic reach. Next slide. So we see initiatives in over 55 countries that are, and what is interesting, we do see some commitments where companies are making commitments in different countries. So that is an interesting sort of new development. So they're trying to replicate their business model across geographies. So, I mean, when we started, when Gordon Brown in 2008 in Downing Street launched the business call to action, we had a lot of large multinationals that were, how would I say, part of the equation. You know, currently 49% of our companies are large MNCs and national companies, but there's this emergence of SMEs and also social enterprises. I mean, I guess multinational SMEs are, a lot of them, social enterprises working in different geography. And these initiatives fall under 8 main sectors related to the SDGs. Next slide. These are the companies that you will hear throughout the day who have made commitments. We will have on stage BATA, GE Healthcare, who will talk about their initiative next. Next slide. So why does SDG matter? Our Director of Sustainable Development, who will be moderating the next panel, will elaborate a little more, and you heard from Magdi. But basically, I think, given the unmet needs on the SDGs, the private sector has a very concrete opportunity to play a role. And inclusive business is one. There are many different specific ways by which the SDGs can be met. But leveraging core business activities to engage base of the pyramid population across these different types of sectors and unmet needs in the SDGs, I think is something that we're trying to build the evidence and something we're keen on further aligning with. Next slide. So we did a sort of mapping of existing commitments around the SDGs, and as you can see, many of the sectors mentioned sort of map out with the goals, you know, whether you're talking about ending poverty, health, education. And I think the key issue we have to think about, that was in Asia last week talking to companies, and why a commitment-based approach from BCtA matters is we need to build the evidence of what are the right outcomes and outputs that the companies are actually meeting, not what those that other people are able. If we can see the reality of what is their impact, then we can bring this to the policy forefront. You know, the impact of the work is to enhance skills. It might not have done X, Y, and Z, but that where the signaling, I think, is highly critical in this discussion, because fundamentally, the SDGs agenda at a national level is to influence policy. So that's where we see our evidence building and a sort of the work, the collective work around the business models be a signal to the macro policymakers around. So that's one of the interesting elements that I found emerging from companies who were much more advanced in terms of this journey of inclusive business. Next slide. We have launched this summer impact measurement service. Basically, we provide for a period of 2.5 years for companies who've made commitments to the business call to action, survey design expertise and technology tools for data collection. We're pleased we have 11 companies that have committed themselves to work on this for the next 2.5 years. It'll be a very interesting, how would I say, experience that we'll be happy to share, I think, at the next meeting. Thank you. That's all I have.